I'm Cheryl Worrell Brown, and we're here today with Marc McGovern, and you're watching live Parking Day in Cambridge with CCTV, and we're in for a treat. Marc,
all right.
We're asking the candidates the same questions.
Okay.
Who are you? What are the three biggest issues you want to address first?
Yep.
What's your plan?
Yep.
And how are you different?
All
so
right.
I'm going to give you a minute to jump right in and talk to the audience.
All right.
Who are you?
Who am I? Well, I'm Marc McGovern. I am a fourth-generation Cantabrigian. My family actually has lived in Cambridge for 99 years. My kids are the fifth generation. I'm a social worker. I've worked with some of the most vulnerable children and families, not just in Cambridge, but across Massachusetts for 25 years. I served for 4 terms on the Cambridge School Committee, and I'm in my second term on the Cambridge City Council, and I'm the vice mayor of the city at the moment, so that's an honor. You know, I'm running again because for a few reasons, and this will get to sort of my priorities too. First of all, I mean, I love this city. I mean, this is where I've lived my entire life.
You've seen changes.
And it's given me so much, and to be in a position where I can help make the lives of fellow Cantabrigians better is something that it's what helps me get up in the morning. I mean, I love it. I love this job is very personal to me. I love serving this community because this community is my home, and it's been my family's home for a long time. 99 years. I look good for 99, though, don't I? You know, maybe not for 48, but for 99. But you know, yes, the city's changed a lot, right? And you know, here we are. Ooh, with a big old truck coming by, pulling over in a bike lane. Not good.
Not good.
You know, here we are, just steps away from Kendall Square with all these billion-dollar companies and surrounded by Harvard and MIT. And it would be really easy for people to think that everybody in Cambridge is doing well, right?
Yes.
But what people don't know is that 18% of our children live in poverty, higher than the state average. And that's using the federal guidelines for poverty, which are ridiculously low. When you control that number for what it costs to live in Cambridge, 48% of our kids live in homes that are financially insecure, right? In this city, with our resources, right? 500 people on our streets every night struggling with homelessness or in our shelters, right?
Yes.
Opioid deaths on our streets, 13 deaths in 2015, 26 deaths in 2016, and we're going to pass 26 deaths this year. So as wonderful a community as we are, as resourced as we are, we have a lot of work to do if we're going to be the socially and economically just community that we want to be.
Yeah.
And as a social worker who's committed his life to those issues, this is what I push for in the City Council. So my first priority really centers around social and economic justice. And under that umbrella is affordable housing, early childhood education, a living wage, jobs, you know, how do we make sure, homelessness, how do we make sure that everybody living in our city has the opportunity to be successful and to thrive?
Right.
And right now, some of us have that opportunity, but a lot of us don't.
Exactly.
And that doesn't sit well with me. So that's my first priority, is really tackling issues around housing and poverty and hunger. You know, I was on the school committee for a long time, and we always talked about how do you close the achievement gap, right? How do you make sure that low-income kids and kids of color can do as well as middle-class white kids can do? And, you know, no matter how good our schools are and how great our teachers are, if you have a student who's going home to no food and no electricity, they're not going to do as well.
Exactly.
So these are issues that the council falls into our domain and that we really need to do a lot better job working on. So that's what drives me.
Yeah. Well, how can people, I've gone to your website, how can people get in contact with you? And we're not wrapping up yet, but we want to let them know ahead of time. How can they contact you to find out more about you?
Yeah.
What's their website?
Yeah, so marcmcgovern.com, M-A-R-C, not the K. Okay. Although there is a social worker in Cambridge who works with homeless population who's Marc McGovern with a K. And we get confused for each other all the time. So I'm M-A-R-C, marcmcgovern.com.
Yes.
I hold regular office hours. I'm actually one of the, really other than the mayor, the only city councilor that holds regular weekly office hours. So from 9 to 11 every Monday morning, people can just drop in at City Hall and see me. but I'm always willing to meet with anybody, anywhere, anytime.
Yeah. Well, I visited your website, and I did see issues that were near and dear to your heart. Social justice, economic justice. How are you feeling about, because you, like you say, generations you've been here, how are you feeling about the gentrification, as some would call it, or people being priced out of an area because of inequity?
Right.
We talk about inequality, but there are certain things as inequity where people cannot be employed because we have biotech, we have high-tech corporations coming in offering top dollar for a specific skill.
Right.
People who are being priced out and not afforded the equity of employment.
Yep, yep. So, this is nothing new.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, Cambridge has, if you look at our demographics, they run really parallel to the industry that we've had in the city. When we were a farming community, we looked one way. When we were a manufacturing community, that's when my great-grandfather came here. That's when you saw people come in from the Caribbean. They came to work in the factories that were here. When those factories went away, we had a really down period for a while. And then now we have biotech and pharmaceuticals and innovation, and now that's bringing in a different group of people. So gentrification has happened periodically in our city's history. And so a lot of the people who move, I mean, I was talking to a woman who was talking about how upset she was that all these younger people were moving into the city.
Yes.
And I said, well, when did you move here? And she said 1973. And I said, you were the gentrification to my grandmother? Because my grandmother never graduated high school, worked an assembly line, and you were the college-educated, progressive. They made the Cambridge that I grew up in, right? Which is great. But Cambridge wasn't always the People's Republic. It was, you certainly had the intellectual portion of Cambridge with Harvard and MIT, but Cambridge was a really working class community. And then in the 70s and, early 70s, late 70s, early 80s, a new group of professionals came in. And you know what? They priced out the people that were working in the factories.
Makes sense.
So this happens in thriving communities, right?
It's cyclical.
It's cyclical. And, the positive side is that Cambridge is a very wealthy city. We're rebuilding 4 schools without any state money or without raising anybody's property taxes.
Right.
We are doing things that other communities can't do because of Kendall Square. So that's the good side. The bad side is that you have people who are making higher salaries coming in, and they're getting into bidding wars with the people who are here for the housing stock that we have. And who's going to win in that argument? The person with more money or the person with less money? So, it's all a balance, right? But it's not new.
You're exactly right. And in life, change is inevitable. And how do you survive unless you stay relevant and reinvent yourself?
Right.
And Cambridge seems, as you said, to have been able to reinvent itself.
Right. So you had asked about just sort of what some thoughts that I have. I think that you have some people running for office who are saying, well, if we don't build any more housing, we'll stop gentrification. People with money are moving here, whether you want them to or not, whether I want them to or not, right? Because that's where the jobs are. And so if we don't build more housing to help meet that demand, they're going to outbid the people for the housing that's here.
Exactly.
And so I think we have to build more housing, certainly more affordable housing, but also more market rent housing. Because, again, if someone's moving here for a job, you want to have enough housing to be able to meet that need.
Explain that. What is market rent?
So market rent, is what, the high prices that we're all talking about, right? So someone who can afford, if you're someone who can afford $2,500 a month for a 1-bedroom, right? If you don't build other 1-bedrooms, then they're going to come in and they're going to go to a triple-decker, a 3-family house, and they're going to say, I'll give you $2,500 for this apartment, where a family might be able to say, well, we can only do $1,000. Who's going to get the apartment? The landlord's going to go with the highest bidder, right? So you have to build more housing, and the Metro Boston or the Metro Boston Housing Report Card comes out every year, and it looks at housing prices in Cambridge. And one of the things or in Metro Boston, and one of the things they say is that if communities can get to a vacancy rate of 5.5%, so 5.5% of their housing is empty, rents start to come down. Cambridge is at a 3% vacancy rate. So if we can build some more and we can add more apartments, then you start the supply and demand issue starts to even out a little bit more, right? So that's one thing we need to do. We also need to make sure that we're protecting folks that are in our affordable housing. I want to create a housing, an office of housing sustainability, or where Boston has one where, you know, people who are either looking for house right now, if you're looking for affordable housing, you got to go to 5 different departments to find out what's going on.
Oh.
We should consolidate everything into one place where people know they can go and get information, they can get advocacy, they can get legal help if they need it. They can learn what their rights are. A lot of people feel like if the landlord says that you're going to get evicted, they feel like they have no recourse. Well, you do have recourse, but people don't know that. So how do we do a better job of educating people about what their rights are? And then how do we create programs that really, you know, help people stay in the city? We have, there's a lot of people with Section 8. If you look at the ceiling of what Section 8 will pay for, and then you look at the floor of what market rent is, there's a gap. So even with Section 8, you can't even afford the cheapest apartment in Cambridge. So I want the city to start looking at gap vouchers. How do we help supplement that space so that we can help someone who has Section 8 actually live in Cambridge? Because too often they have to move out of the city. And then they lose their spot on any of the lists that they're on because they're no longer Cambridge residents, and it makes it almost impossible for them to come back. So there's a lot of things we can do.
Well, you have a long list of not only a wish list, but a long list of experience.
Yeah.
So you're compassionate. You want to make a change. What would you say is different about you? How are you different? Because a lot of people empathize with the problem,
right?
But I'm not sure if they can actually solve the problem. What makes you different?
Right. So this is the toughest election I've ever been a part of. Because it's the strongest group of candidates that I've ever been a part of, right?
That's a good thing.
Which is a good thing, right? But here's the difference. You know, when people go into the voting booth to decide who gets their number one vote, and your number one vote is your vote. Your ballot counts once. So if you give someone a 2, a 3, or a 4, there's this whole complicated thing that has to happen for them to ever see your ballot. So your number one vote's your most important. So when you decide who you're going to give that to, because we're all talking about similar things, I hope people think about 2 things for me. One is collaboration, and the other is concrete action.
Collaboration, concrete action.
Collaboration is a dirty word in politics these days, right? If you reach across the aisle to work with someone who your constituents don't like, your constituents hate you, right? And that trickles down into municipal government. We don't have Republicans and Democrats, but there are people who support me who don't like other city councilors. If I work with those other city councilors, those people get mad at me. There are people who support those other city councilors who, if they work with me, they get mad at them. So I'm someone who has filed major policy initiatives with every other member of the city council. Nobody on the city council can say that. I have worked with all 8 members on important issues, not just ceremonial things. Nobody else can say that. So I know how to bring people together. I know how to find common ground. I know how to say, you know what, I may disagree with you on this issue, but we agree on this. So let's not hold grudges. Let's do this piece of work together, and then let's debate this one. Nobody else in this race has the record that I have on that.
Wow.
And then the other is concrete action. There's a lot of people who talk about, yes, affordable housing or homelessness. I've actually taken steps to address those issues, leading the way to increase the inclusionary zoning percentage to 20%. Other councilors voted for it, but Mayor Simmons and I were the 2 that actually did the work to make it happen. Raising this thing called incentive zoning, which is the amount of money that commercial developers have to pay the city for affordable housing when they build a new building. That dollar amount was $4.56 per square foot for 20 years. Denise Simmons and I led the effort to raise that to $15 a square foot, creating millions of more dollars for affordable housing. So we don't just talk, and I love the mayor and Denise, we work great together. We don't just talk about what we would like things, how we would like things to be. We actually do things to make it happen.
You have a track record.
We have a track record. So,
Okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you did well. I think they got the message.
I hope so.